Kanye West launches another anti-Semitic rant to promote his new single, which apparently features Diddy.
So I'm just not going to partake in this sort of like Judas culture.
The Tate brothers continue to divide MAGA and goad Florida's governor, Ron DeSantis.
He's not welcome here. What does that mean? He's not been convicted of a crime.
Ben Shapiro calls the George Floyd's killer, Derek Chauvin, to be pardoned.
This was never a case that was about race. It was really about, fentanyl.
A new Michael Jackson documentary repeats claims that he was an abuser.
You will suddenly see the news conspire to smear these people, whether it's a pedophile, whether it's as an anti-Semite. That's what I got when I left an organization.
He's also been recently taking a closer, a controversial look at the case of Harvey Weinstein.
He was wrongfully, in my belief, wrongfully convicted and should be freed.
Sounds like it's time for the return of Candace Owens to Uncensored. Candace, how are you?
I'm doing well, Piers. How are you?
You've been very busy.
I have been busy indeed, much too busy, but it's always a blessing, so I'm grateful.
Well, look, it's good to have you on. So much to talk to you about. I want to start with Kanye West. I've got to say, personally, I know that you've had a good relationship with him. You've talked to him and so on, as I have done. I interviewed him, tried to give him a bit of benefit of the doubt over various things. I got to say, his sort of brazen stuff now on a daily, sometimes minute-by-minute basis on X with the swastikas, the Nazis, and so on. I just find it utterly repellent. Has anything he's been doing in the last 2-3 weeks changed your mind about what's going on here with him?
Okay, so first I just want to say that I definitely told your producers that I didn't want to speak about Ye, but it's totally fine if you want to ask me the question.
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that. Well, that wasn't communicated to me, but if you don't mind, I'd just be curious about your view.
Yeah, sure. So my view has been pretty consistent in that when you have a real relationship with someone, you shouldn't be lashing them in the public for anything. There's something about the entire world having commentary about Kanye when he tweets, and that exact same part of the world telling us that we have to remain mum when Bibi Netanyahu literally goes DEFCON 3, but Kanye tweets something about DEFCON 3. That just makes me uncomfortable and feels really disingenuous. And like I said, when you have an actual relationship with someone, if you have anything to say to them, you should say that to that person directly. And so I'm just not going to partake in this sort of like Judas culture of stabbing people in the front when you have a real relationship with them. And I've maintained that consistently, and I'm not going to break that code today.
I mean, some would say, look, I just want to play this clip and get your response to this. I mean, this is him doing, Ku Klux Klan imagery with swastikas. And so it's so brazen. It's so taunting. And you talk about people who are directly attacking people. He's directly attacking Jewish people when he does this and making them feel extremely uncomfortable, extremely threatened by this, because he's got 32 million people following him on X alone. His social media firepower to galvanize hate against the Jewish people is being laid bare, isn't it, in real time?
Just a question for you. When you saw the Klansman hoodie, why did you say taunting against Jewish people but didn't mention anything about Black people? Yeah, but it's just interesting that of the two things you chose to lean into Jewish people and not to speak about what the Klansman hood represents.
Well, both. Let's say both. I mean, they're both, the Nazis and the Ku Klux Klan were both despicable people who targeted certain members of society and wanted to cause them enormous harm, if not kill them. And that's why people are finding what he's doing.
That, like, when I saw the image, I thought you were going to say something about Black America and maybe speak about the fact that Kanye is Black, but you just instantly went to accusing or speaking about how Jewish people felt about it. I think that's interesting. I just find that response to be interesting.
He's literally selling swastikas.
Yeah, Piers, if you would like to provide commentary on, if you want to provide commentary on Ye, I have maintained I'm not going to participate in Judas culture. I don't believe in the emphasis that has been placed on me, people knowing that I have a personal relationship with him, to throw him under the bus publicly. It's not the person that I am spiritually, and I'm just not going to partake in it. And I've not moved on that 1 inch. And in fact, as time goes by, I feel stronger and stronger that I should not participate in that culture, because there seems to be something sadistic about the entire world condemning someone and then an individual saying, well, I need you to do it, Candace, because you have a personal relationship with him. It's
Actually,
strange.
you know what? Look, we are going to move. We're going to move on. And I wasn't even aware you didn't want to talk about it.
Any person in the entire world that will come onto your platform and say something about Ye. No,
honestly, it's not that. Honestly, I've got
no,
Candace, I've got loads of things I want to talk to you about. It's not all about Ye by any means. I just know you know him, and I know him a bit, and I'm horrified by what I'm seeing. And I just think, I think it raises a lot of issues. One of which is just on a wider point, whether anyone who's got that kind of following should be able to be so brazenly anti-Semitic, putting swastikas on, saying he's a Nazi and so on, whether anyone should be allowed to do that, actually, because by X's own rules, he breaks almost every rule they have. Most people would be suspended a long time ago.
Well, X allows pornography, so...
Well, they don't, though. They actually took him down last time for posting pornography, legal pornography, which was ironic.
There is pornography allowed on X. It's been something that we've been speaking out about and wondering why they allowed pornography. And it only becomes a discussion when Kanye shares the pornography. But we've been speaking about that since Elon Musk took it over. I think it's ridiculous that pornography is allowed. But we don't need to get into a discussion about X's policies and things of that nature, because I've already given you my response on Ye. It's just not a relationship that I'm going to burn publicly, because there are people who are sadists and like to see it.
I respect your right to do that. I do. Entirely down to you. You don't have to comment. I only asked you because, like me, you pretty well comment on everything else and normally have very strident views. And I'd actually tell you what, I'd love to know privately what you think. Why don't we leave it at that? I'll call you afterwards and you can let me know.
That's fine.
I'd actually be really genuinely fascinated. Let's turn to Harvey Weinstein, who again, somebody else I knew for a long time, disgraced, shamed, imprisoned, and so on. You've launched a big public defense of him. Why?
It was actually, I got in touch with him kind of quite accidentally. There was a mutual party who felt that I was the only person, despite me and him having very varying views, very strongly varying views. He's on the left, obviously I'm on the right, that I was the only person that would look at his case fairly, because I have been a vocal critic of the Me Too movement. And to be completely honest, before he and I got on the phone, I believed he was guilty because, well, he was found guilty. And also because the media had even done a number on me in terms of there were just so many allegations, it was difficult to sift through or to not reasonably assume that something had to be true. And so I took a look at the case and was positively shocked at what I discovered. I believe Harvey Weinstein was wrongly convicted. And the reason that he is sitting in prison is because of the media. It was a trial by media and not a trial based on the facts. Now, I want to be very clear here. This does not mean that I think Harvey Weinstein is an upstanding citizen or a moral person. He was completely immoral. That's why he found himself in this circumstance. He was cheating on his wife and by my regard, therefore, cheating on his children. But that's not, you don't put somebody away for rape because you think that they're immoral or that they abuse their power. Hollywood has operated the same way for a very long time. It is a world in which people will prostitute themselves. Women will prostitute themselves for parts, for a chance at becoming famous. And it is rightfully, New York just overturned the decision and is sending it back down to the lower courts because they had the appellate judges, acknowledge the fact that it was essentially a kangaroo court. They were convicting him on character and not based on any of the facts.
Over 90 other women came forward to say or to make allegations of sexually criminal behaviour against him. Does that not give you pause for thought, the sheer volume of people all with similar stories? If you've ever felt like you're being watched online, it's unfortunately because you are. Hundreds of companies, so-called data brokers, watch and record everything you do on the internet. Even if you're using incognito mode or private tabs, they can still access every purchase you make, every search you type, and much more. Your data can be sold to advertisers, government agencies, or insurance companies who could use it to charge you more. You could stand by and accept all of this, or you could reclaim your privacy, as I have done for many years with ExpressVPN. The app redirects 100% of your online traffic through secure servers. No data brokers and no third parties can see what you do. ExpressVPN also hides your IP address, without which there is no way of tracking you and no point invading your privacy in the first place. A new feature called ID Defender is free to all US customers. ID Defender scours the internet to remove your information from the files of data brokers. This is the #1 rated VPN by experts at CNET, PC World, and The Verge. And right now, you can get an extra 4 months of ExpressVPN for free. To scan the QR code that we're showing on the screen, or go to expressvpn.com/peers to get 4 extra months for free. That's expressvpn.com/peers. Now, on with the show.
That is exactly why I believed it, because there were so many women. And then I hadn't even, and I'm sure you didn't realize who actually put him away. How many of those women put him away? And the answer is 3. So it went from 90 accusations, which the media kept hammering into our minds. And it came down to the testimony of 3 women who had consensual sex with him after their alleged rapes, according to their very own testimonies. The 2 women in New York in particular had consensual relations with him thereafter. And when you see the emails sent to him, the text messages sent to him asking for parts, asking for, tickets here, tickets there. One woman in particular brought her mom to meet him. It just, your brain kind of comes undone and you recognize, wow, what happened here was wrong. And like I said, it doesn't condone his behavior. It doesn't condone recognizing your power in Hollywood and recognizing that women will sleep with you simply because they think that you're a conduit to their success. But wrong is wrong, and Harvey and I don't have to agree on politics or agree on moral character or agree on theology in order for me to say that he was wrongfully, in my belief, wrongfully convicted and should be freed.
I spoke to him for over an hour when he went to the sex clinic after the scandal first blew up, but before he'd been convicted of any crimes. And he told me a lot of stuff there, which was certainly fascinating. I don't know how much of it was true or not. I'd known Harvey a long time. He'd stood in for me, actually, on my show at CNN for a week, as my stand-in. He was me for a week. And it, really, he was very distressed at the time, spewing out all this stuff, which, if even half of it was true, certainly gave a different perspective about his interactions with a lot of actresses, that it was, in his estimation, very transactional. And that was clearly what he felt, which is clearly what he's communicated to you. I mean, he's been in prison quite a while now. He's had a lot of health issues. How did he seem to you?
He's still Harvey. I mean, he's powerful. And that was something that also caught me off guard, that he's been sitting in a prison cell. He's genius. There's no question. I mean, obviously, he's made a mark in Hollywood because he's a creative genius, and he's writing scripts right now. He believes that he will be freed one day, because you have to have that perspective. You have to have that positive perspective, or you would become, I think, probably mentally unhealthy. And so it's interesting. We are so different in many ways, but I've grown to understand the business side of Harvey. And you can definitely sense that he's optimistic about the court having overturned it. And I think the same will happen in Los Angeles, which to me was the most egregious, verdict in all of it. And the New York ones are pretty hideous. And it really just shows you the power of these social justice movements that pursue social justice, but not true justice, which means they just need someone to hang at the end of the day after a movement grows too big. And Harvey was the person that they moved to hang, for me too.
I mean, that dovetails neatly with Andrew Tate, who was on your show after he left Romania recently. Again, I've interviewed him a number of times. The Tate, a lot of people think here, let's play the clip from Andrew on your show first, and I'll ask you a question about it.
Let's pretend this is about law and order, and they're truly concerned for the citizens of Florida. Then follow me around with secret police and investigate me in quiet. And if you find something, arrest me. Why the song? Why the dance? Why the press? Why the public? Why are you doing all of this if you're not trying to divert people away from the important things? The important things, like all the actual crime and corruption that's happening.
I mean, do you feel they are also, him and his brother, unfairly targeted by, if you like, the all-embracing Me Too movement?
Yeah, so I can tell you, I objectively took a look at their Romanian case and their Romanian case only. And years before everybody else, years before it got sent back down, I said that there's nothing in this case. Like, I mean, this case is just not going to pass. And it seems to me to be like over judicial. And I was proven correct on that. And people were angry at me because they said, well, look at these videos they made 10 years ago. Do you agree? No, I obviously don't agree with that. But again, you can't convict somebody on character. We have to actually take a look at the cases that are before them. And I have 3 sons now, or I'm soon to have my 3rd son in a couple of weeks. And it's just not something that I can get behind. If we're going to put men in prison, it has to be on the basis of the allegations that are against them. And in Romania, I knew that case would fall apart. Extremely disappointed in what Ron DeSantis did. because what Ron DeSantis did is exactly what the left did when the AG, Attorney General Letitia James, said, I don't like Trump and I will therefore find a crime, right? I think what happened that day, and this has been a remarkable level of cowardice that DeSantis has displayed over and over again, is that he listens to his donors. It's why I never supported him. I never supported him over Trump for this very reason. My suspicion is he got word very late in the day that Andrew Tate was landing. A bunch of neocons texted him. A lot of them live in Florida and said, this can't happen. This can't happen. And he bristled. And you see that in the first press conference. You know, he's not welcome here. What does that mean? He's not been convicted of a crime. What do you mean he's not welcome here? He holds an American passport and he's not been convicted of a crime. The correct position of strength to have on that would have been, I hate everything about this Andrew Tate character. I hate what he represents. I hate the culture that he's bringing, but he's an American citizen and he's going to be treated as such. Instead, they said, we'll find something. And then they began the fishing expedition, which I just stand against, whether it's Trump, whether it's Tate, whether it was you, Piers Morgan. If it was you, Piers Morgan, my platform would be used to say this is wrong. This is not the way. We shouldn't be running America like a Soviet regime. Show me the man and I'll show you the crime. He should do something. And then we should look at the evidence, as Pam Bondi said in her hearing for confirmation. That's the way the judicial system is supposed to run. We are aware of a crime and we are investigating that crime, and that crime has led us to this person.
You've got 3 sons. I've got 3 sons. You know, when I interviewed Tate and see other interviews with him, you know, there's a lot I would agree with about how young men, this is why they gravitate to him, right? About taking care of yourself, working out, you know, clean living, all that kind of stuff. That's all fine. And the sort of empowering language use, that's all fine. The big problem I have with him, putting aside all the allegations, which I just don't know the truth of them. Honestly, I just don't know. But putting all that aside, the sort of brazen misogyny that he comes out with, I don't like that aspect at all. As a mum of 3 sons who has, you know, strong personal principles, what do you feel about that side of it? If they started when they're older watching Andrew Tate and he's saying women should stay at home and they should do this and do that, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm not offended by the idea that women should stay home. I think that's great. My grandmother stayed home, and I told you I'm not a modern feminist, so that doesn't offend me. But to your other points, I know what you're referring to, and what I've always maintained is that Andrew Tate and his brother were actually a response to a misandrist culture, women that hated men. Before Andrew Tate, there was Lena Dunham. There was Lena Dunham saying terrible things about the patriarchy, about men ain't this. There were Beyonce albums, there were Taylor Swift albums, and people want to pretend that that's not relevant. Men were getting beat over the head over and over again for just being men, being told your tail needs to be between your legs at all times. There's just something wrong with masculinity. There were all of these fruity terms, toxic masculinity. And finally, you get some guys that stand up and they say, you know what? No, the girls suck. The girls are actually this. The women are not anything. And suddenly the culture goes, I don't know where this is coming from. Well, it came from toxic femininity, actually, is what bred this. And that's exactly actually one of the things that I'm bringing up in my book, which is publishing in a couple of months. Make them a sandwich. It gets into the history of exactly what we're speaking about. How did we arrive at this culture? Women produced it. So you can thank Lena Dunham's. If there's something that you don't like about what Andrew Tate says and why young men are following him, we've got to go backwards and take a look at the women who brought forth this modern feminist movement, which was really just about hating men. I
actually agree with you. I think you make a very good point there. I do think it was toxic femininity that led to the fight back. And it's tricky with the Tates because I do think some of the stuff they do strays into toxic masculinity by that definition. And it's just the misogyny stuff. If they cut that out, a lot of what they say about how young men should conduct themselves, I'm fine with. So no problem with it. It's just when they get into the treating women like doormats and stuff, I don't like it. Anyway, let's move on to somebody else who may or may not have visa issues, currently has one, Mahmoud Halil. It's a complicated one here because you and I are big supporters of free speech. This guy is married to an American woman who's 8 months pregnant with their child. He's a permanent US resident with a green card. He was leading these protests on the campus, but he doesn't seem to have engaged directly in illegal acts himself. But I thought Marco Rubio had a good point when he said, had he put down his support for Hamas, for example, which this group have definitely done, been very vocal in support of him, had he put that on his application for the green card, it probably would have been rejected on that ground. And so why wouldn't they have the right now to kick him out, given he's on a green card and he, hid these views until he made them public? The IRS is the biggest collection agency in the world, and with April the 15th now fast approaching, it's more aggressive than ever. Enforcement has ramped up in 2025, and if you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, waiting is not an option. The longer you do, the worse it gets. April 15th marks another tax year that has passed you by. The smart move is to get ahead, but never contact the IRS alone. Let the experts at Tax Network USA handle this for you. Why? Well, not all tax resolution companies are the same. Tax Network USA has a preferred direct line to the IRS, meaning they know exactly which agents to deal with and which to avoid. They have proven strategies to settle tax problems in your favor, whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million. Tax Network USA's attorneys and negotiators have already resolved over $1 billion in tax debt. You can talk to one of their strategists today. It's free. Stop the threatening letters. Stop looking over your shoulder. Protect yourself from property seizures and bank levies. Don't let the IRS control your future. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers. That's PIERS. April 15th is upon us. Act now before the IRS does it first. Call 1-800-958-1000 or visit tnusa.com/peers.
So I would just ask you the question. I did hear Marco Rubio say that, but he said if any person puts down that they support Hamas, then we would get rid of them. No one yet has produced any evidence that he supported Hamas. And
the organization that he was fronting, the organization has. The organization has. The CUAD has.
The AP debunked that.
Yeah.
The AP, I don't know if you know this up into the minute, but the AP has debunked that. He was actually not a part of the organization CUAD. And in fact, the video is now making the rounds of him from April of last year when he comes out and speaks to the press and says, I'm not a member or affiliated with CUAD. I'm actually here just trying to facilitate negotiations between the university and the CUAD organization. So thus far, and this is at least up to the minute from the AP and also from his own mouth before he could have possibly known he was going to be arrested 1 year later, he's not affiliated with this organization. So there's a lot of lies that we're kind of have to sort through of people that are warring. I'm very open, as I've said from the beginning. If it is proven that he was a part of any organization or if he personally handed out a pamphlet that was about violence, you would have me on board. I am consistent on the fact, and I don't know why they didn't just pick, there were plenty of students who got violent, who broke the law, who were arrested. Why did we make him the poster child for this? This was, to me, just an unforced error. There were so many students to choose from, and they chose this person who hasn't been arrested for anything, doesn't appear to be a part of CUAD, and also isn't here on a short-term visa. He has a green card. He is a United States resident. And that upsets me, obviously, because I am married to a Brit. He is here on a green card. And so it is important for me to know what was why was this decision determined? What are the actual facts? Because if you don't think we're going to get bit by this when the Democrats have power, we almost did. We did get bit by this with January 6th. If I had been there that day when my husband had just been deported because, well, she's here and we don't like these viewpoints that are being espoused on January 6th, so we're just going to deport and ask no further questions. I need them to provide us with something concrete as to why they pursued him and not the many other students who were actually breaking the law that day.
Well, it's interesting about the CUAD because I didn't know that update on that. And that does change it because it seems to me all the reasons to deport him they've been putting out there are to do with him fronting this organization, which has been very vocal in espousing pro-Hamas sentiment, in talking about violence being the answer and so on. If he genuinely is not a paid-up member of this group and has, never been, that's a very different situation.
Right. And not even Marco Rubio said that he was a member of the group. So all we had were a bunch of Zionist accounts that were saying he was a leader of this group. And I was just going, I don't need to listen to Twitter chatter. I actually just need the facts. And people that are saying, oh, we shouldn't be privy to them. Let's be very clear. The White House chose to make him the poster boy.
Yeah.
The White House chose to post Shalom. So now we're all interested and we want the facts, and people are going, well, we don't have them, or we're not ready to give them. That to me doesn't pass the sniff test. And again, the reason why I'm angry about this is only because, or I'm fired up about it rather, is only because I can just see us getting bit by this when Trump is out of office and the Democrats are in power.
I think inevitably that's what's going to happen. Just quickly, Ben Shapiro, who you used to work with, obviously, we won't relitigate all that as to why you're not, but Derek Chauvin, he wants him pardoned. Let's take a look.
If we are issuing pardons, however, there is one person that President Trump should pardon from federal charges forthwith. It would be incredibly controversial, but I think that it's absolutely necessary. That person is Derek Chauvin. President Trump should, in fact, pardon Derek Chauvin. He should. He should pardon him his federal charges.
You agree?
I disagree for several reasons. The first reason is because I don't believe Derek Chauvin would want that. I was kind of surprised to see that, obviously, because I worked on an entire documentary when I was at the Daily Wire, and I had communication with Derek Chauvin's family, his friends, and to my knowledge, they did not reach out to them before doing this. And it seemed to be, sign up and we'll get this over to Trump or whatever, which is, email gathering, so to speak. And if you are going to be passionate about this issue, you should know the facts are that he's finally in a good prison. The first prison, when his mother was crying to me on the phone that he was in, was something like 9 by 9, and he was basically confined to solitary for 23 hours per day. And she broke down on the phone crying with me about this. That was the state prison, because he's got charges. He was charged, found guilty at the state level and the federal level. So once they removed him from there and he was found guilty on the federal level, he was brought to a prison in Arizona where he was stabbed. And that was, I think it was medium. And then they moved him where he is now, which is a low-level security prison that's based in Texas, and he's much happier there. If you revoke the federal, if he pardons him on the federal, he will get transferred back to the state. And so I would just like to know what guided that. I would have appreciated if you're going to get involved in that, I think you have to speak to the family and make sure it's something that they actually want. And my imagination, having spoken to his mother, again, that was years ago, is that they would much prefer a pardon on the state level to happen, which would mean that any organization that's trying to do this because it's the moral and right thing should be getting behind someone who can make that state pardon happen, a gubernatorial race, so to speak, in Michigan.
But ultimately, do you personally feel he was wrongly convicted of murder?
Oh, absolutely. And that was the whole thesis of my entire documentary looking into the case. That was another one where, like Harvey Weinstein, he was hung because of a social movement, and people didn't know the facts regarding that case. They didn't know anything about his fentanyl levels. They didn't know. They still thought that he cried out to his mom and said, "Mama, mama." That was actually what he called his girlfriend. And when you look at prior arrests, because he was arrested all the time in that area, he says, "I want mama, I want mama." And so, it's a sad case. Drug addiction is sad on its face. And I was happy to speak with his roommates about that and understand the struggle that he was going through. And if the media hadn't gotten involved, this should have been a case to bring Americans together because of the opioid crisis, something that black, white, no matter who you are in this country, you would understand what drugs does to families in general. And instead, they went the racial route, and the media, and particularly, I'm sorry, I said Michigan before, I meant to say Minnesota, particularly Minnesota, the attorney general withheld information from the public that would have made them realize this was never a case that was about race. It was really about, fentanyl.
And it's a case of a police officer who knelt on someone's neck for way too long. I mean, we can accept that, can't we?
That's actually not a fact either. You should watch my documentary.
So
the angle from Darnella's cell phone, if you look at something from the front, it looks like they're on that he's on his neck, his right knee's on his neck, but actually what he has him in is just under his neck, which is what the police officers are taught to do when you put someone on the ground. And I also want to be clear, they tried to peaceably arrest him. They had him in the back of a cruiser. If you actually watch the full arrest tape, he begs to be taken out and he begs to be put on the ground. George Floyd asked to be put on the ground. And so the standard police procedure is to put the knee just below the neck here, which even right now, if you're looking at me from the front, it might look like I'm holding on my neck, but I'm not. I'm actually holding my back. So there's a lot of stuff that the public should be ready to have that conversation about. And maybe on the anniversary of the George Floyd riots, I'll do something on my podcast to show them the full arrest tape, because it changes everything when you see it. One
of the other ongoing massive talking points about whether he was guilty or not of what people thought he was guilty of, Michael Jackson. Let's watch a clip. This is you talking about Michael Jackson.
He wanted to stand up for these small guys and say, we cannot allow these sorts of things to go on anymore. Take a listen.
Record companies really, really do conspire against their artists. They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists. Sony, Tommy Mottola. Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
That clip was from 2002, his declaration of war on the industry of people who he was alleging was intentionally stealing and selling artists short, and who he no longer wanted to work with because he wanted to be a free agent. He wanted nothing to do with these people. And as Ian said, he was fighting this war privately, and he was winning. At least he was winning it in the courtroom.
I mean, it's a fascinating case. I mean, I interviewed Jackson once. You know, a lot of people feel very strongly both ways about Michael Jackson. There's no doubt this new bombshell documentary coming out this week, Leaving Neverland 2, it repeats the allegations that Jackson was a paedophile, and it all got covered up and bought off and so on. What do you feel about that? I mean, Jackson, to me, he was a very strange guy. He was pretty creepy in the way that he went about his life. At best, he's openly sharing his bed with 13-year-old boys or younger again and again and again and again and again. That's not normal behavior for a guy in his 40s, 50s. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he was sexually abusing them. Where do you sit with this?
I was someone who similarly believed the allegations against him until I looked into it. And what I said on my podcast holds. He was somebody who was going to war with the record labels and was winning. And then suddenly there were all of these allegations that he was a pedophile. And when you look into the genesis of those allegations, it was a father who drugged his son, literally drugged his son, to make him say that Michael Jackson molested him. And that ends up being a really tragic story. You have his sister, who was married to a sort of Russian immigrant gangster who forced her to say that the allegations were true, LaToya Jackson. And it's quite stunning what happened to him, but it's something that we see happen a lot when you have artists who are talented, who seek to go out on their own. This still happens today, whether it's in the news business, whether it's in podcasting, or whether it's in music. You will suddenly see the news conspire to smear these people, whether it's a pedophile, whether it's as an anti-Semite. That's what I got when I left an organization, and suddenly I had a squeaky clean record and the media came after me. So I think we are understanding now what the media beast is. And it tends to be when people cannot be controlled, it thinks that it can whip them, like it can just kind of lash at them and come after them, and we will destroy you if you are not a voice that we can control. And so I am not somebody that is moved by the press making allegations. It's almost the contrary. When the press really attacks someone, I'm inclined to believe them. That's how it works now, because I've just seen so many of these cases where they just lie blatantly, and it's about taking down somebody who they can't control, whether that be Tucker Carlson, who's going through it this week. God forbid you have a conversation that people don't like. And it's because he can't be controlled, whether it's Joe Rogan, Tucker Carlson, or Michael Jackson. He was just a little bit before his time. And I wish I could have been older when that was happening, because I would have been a voice for clarity and showed people the things that the media wasn't showing them.
I mean, some would say, come off it, Candace. Look at what you're doing to Brigitte Macron, the First Lady of France, telling the world she's a man. Now Tucker's repeating that she's a man. She's not a man. She's a woman. You're waging a campaign against her to denigrate her in the public eye. What do you say to the charge of hypocrisy?
I think people have been asking me to get back onto your show because you owe me some money now that my series has completed and it's gone worldwide, and that's how the truth works. I'm certain you haven't watched it, because the majority opinion is that she was born a man now, and that's because rather than allowing people to just say it was crazy. I just took the time and showed them all of the overwhelming evidence that it was true. Look, we live in a time where there are transgendered people. Brigitte Macron just happens to be one of them. You know, it's as big of a deal as Emmanuel Macron wants to make it by trying to go after people and silence them all. As Tucker said, he thought it was crazy and then he looked into it. And that's kind of what my series does. And we took great pains to go through it because I know at the end of it, I was going to get $100,000 from Piers Morgan. So I dotted my I's and I crossed my T's, and I'm willing to collect that money the next time I'm in the UK.
Yeah, you just have to produce some actual evidence, and then we can have a conversation about that.
You're going to have to watch the series.
Otherwise, you'll be paying me a massive check. We're being wrapped up by your excellent team, quite rightly. They told us you had a set amount of time. But finally, you raised the issue of your book, the sandwich question on the cover. If you were making me a sandwich, which sandwich would you make me, Candace?
Oh, gosh, that's a tricky one. I feel like I should say roast beef.
Yes.
Roast beef sandwich. I think that's the right way. Is that right?
Horseradish.
I felt like that was right.
Yeah, roast
with
beef. Horseradish.
Yeah.
And you don't toast it. You have just bread, like sourdough bread with roast beef, horseradish. Fabulous. What a choice. Yeah.
I'm married to a Brit. That was easy.
Exactly. I made it too easy for you. Candace, great to have you back. Lovely to talk to you. And by the way, best of luck with your impending birth. How long to go?
6.5 weeks.
Great. You excited?
Yeah, I'm always excited. Expanding the family. That's what it's all about, you know, faith and family.
You and Elon Musk reversing the world's population problems.
A little slightly different, but I'll allow it.
Do you know what you're having?
A boy. This is the third boy. I have a girl too, but this is my third boy.
Oh, great. Well, listen, best of luck to you. I hope it all goes really well. Appreciate you coming back on Uncensored. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Piers.
Take care. Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show, we ask for only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.